All right, for the first time in, let's see here, almost 10 months of doing this, I'm at a loss for words. Nick Emmanwori snubbed out of the first round of the NFL draft. Instant overreaction starts right now.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Locked On Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marler. I hope everyone's having a fantastic Thursday night, Friday morning, now that you're listening to this. Going to be a quick one. It's a 12:06 a.m. Recording, and in shock. And we will get to that in a second. Nick Emmanwori does not get drafted in the first round. Before we do, I want to say thank you to everyone making Locked On Gamecocks your first listen each and every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Remember, we're a free and available podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. NBA playoffs are underway. Hopefully, made some money tonight in the NFL draft prop bets we talked about earlier. But make sure you are joining FanDuel.com. There's no better time to do it because right now your first, $5 bet, if it wins, you will win $250 in bonus bets immediately, thereafter. So make sure you do that today. Let's get to it. Shocked. No clue. Talked about this on the other episodes. Talked about this for a while because I thought the question for a while was how many players South Carolina would get in the first round, not whether or not they would have one. Nick Emmanwori, make no mistake about it. Like we've talked about this before. This is not a good prospect. This is a prospect that went to the combine, and he does something that's so rare, it seems like nowadays, in this day and age of the NFL draft, and that's this. He has put on nothing but seemingly good tape for years. Great in coverage, great hips, sideline to sideline guy, great at a ball hawk. Can not only go get the football, but then goes and puts it in the end zone after that. Multiple touchdowns scored over his several years. Big enough to play in the box and play in the front seven if you want to and come down and stop the run. 6'3", 220, ran a 4.4 40, close to a 4.3, near a 40-inch vert. What he put on tape over the last couple of years in the best conference in the country should speak for itself. Flat out, it should speak for itself. Not only was he able to do that, but then he went to Indianapolis at the combine and put up he put up the best combine performance of any safety, not any South Carolina safety, not any SEC safety, of any safety in the history of the combine. His relative athletic score was better than anyone else in the history of the combine at that position since 1987. You had over 2,100 players at the safety position that have gone through and competed in the combine. He had the highest score of all time. He's a combination of freak athleticism, rare size and speed, and above all else, I think what I'm so down about is that he's just such a good story. He's such a good kid. And the fact that you had Nick Emmanwori go through his last 2 years and how good of a job he was, how good of a job he did, how great of a player he was, and then on top of that, like how great of an ambassador he's been for the University of South Carolina and this football program, for him to go through the draft process and the pre-draft process because he hasn't been drafted yet, and then to get blanked and snubbed on day one on Thursday, I'm shocked. I'm genuinely shocked. I'm at a loss for words as to what just happened. I've been doing this podcast since July 1st of last year. The LSU game, I think outside of that, that's the only time I've ever been speechless before, and I feel speechless. I don't know what to say. I hate it for him. I hate it for the program, really, because I thought going into this, what you were going to have was for the second straight year, you were going to have somebody that came in, was a former 3-star, and former 3-star. You were going to have one from both sides of the field or both sides of the ball, with Leggett last year, and then Emmanwori this year, that were somewhat overlooked players and prospects coming out of high school from the state of South Carolina. And then you bring them into your program, you develop them, and you turn them into first-round picks. And I thought that you were going to have back-to-back years of being able to do that. Let's see here. I want to look this up real quick to make sure I'm correct when I say it. All time you've had 16 total first-round picks. In the history of this program, you've never had seasons where you had back-to-back years. Never mind. In 2004 and 2005, you had back-to-back years, and you did in 2006, back-to-back years with first-round picks. And that's awesome. So from 2004 to 2006, you had a first-round pick. That was Dunta Robinson. And then, let's see here, Troy Williamson went to the Vikings. And then, of course, Jonathan Joseph, who went to the Bengals. Those three players were all drafted back-to-back. You, of course, have the year in 2012. You had two players drafted in the first round with Ingram and then Stephon Gilmore. But it wasn't until 2014 that Clowney got drafted. I keep mixing that up. It would have been in my opinion, I think stuff like this is a really big deal for stuff like a notch on your belt. I think in this day and age, it's really big to be able to have stuff like this to pitch at recruits. For Emmanwori himself, like specifically for him as a player, if I'm trying to be the eternal optimist and the most positive, person I can be about it, and I try to sunshine pump a lot of times on here, I guess, as some people say, if I'm doing that, then I'm looking at this saying like, man, there's not a better player on this draft board that you could put a chip on their shoulder. That's all the kids know, right? Like former 3-star from Irmo that no one looked at, went to a camp, finally got seen and was like, yeah, we'll go get that kid. But outside of that, you didn't have a ton of things like that. Like you didn't have a ton of players that like. I just felt like he was a surefire pick. It just felt like he was a surefire pick. And here's the thing: watching this year's draft, there weren't a ton of surprises. It felt like a lot of the guys went where they were supposed to go and slotted to go. Sure, Sanders obviously didn't, but it felt like there was a lot of normal things that happened. Right. This kid not going in the first round is not one of the normal things that happened. It's just not. So you're left with 0 players in the first round, which is not something that's uncommon. You've had 16 total players drafted in the first round all time, right? We've talked about this before. Of those, you also have talked about how the fact that I think all 16 were in the common draft era. So that's great. It's not like you've had like there's like some teams like Vandy's one of them. There's a couple others just like, they have like a decent amount of draft picks. Or Mississippi State's like this. You have a bunch of draft picks, but a lot of them are like way, way, way back in the day. It's not a bad look, I don't think, for the program. I think what you will say, if you're trying to be overly optimistic, and I'll try to do that here, going into the second round, you're going to have the second day, I should say, between the second and third round, you're going to have a lot of kids taken off the board. You're going to have at least 3 kids, I think, taken off the board, knock on wood. Because now you should have TJ Sanders go in the second round. Now you should have Nick Emmanwori go in the second round. Now you'll also probably have guys like Tonka, guys like Kyle Kennard, guys like Demetrius Knight Jr. Those guys will start to be looked at, like especially Demetrius Knight Jr. and Kyle Kennard. So you might end up being one of the teams that has nearly 4 to 5 players drafted on day 2, which is great. You still are in line to probably have 8 guys total that could get picked up. We'll see where that goes. But, just a frustrating into the night. Now, I told you it's going to be a quick episode. We will take a quick break, and then we'll be back. Before we do, I do want to tell you about our friends at FanDuel real quick. You guys have heard me talk about them before. You're going to hear me talk about them again, like I always say. FanDuel right now, there's no better time to join than right now, because as of today, you have the NBA playoffs going on. You have the NHL playoffs going on. I'm currently recording this in a bunker in Tampa, Florida, in a house full of Lightning fans. It's been a tough one for them. But what's not a tough one for anyone is when you go sign up for FanDuel immediately, and you can get in on the action right away. If you place your first $5 bet and it wins, FanDuel will give you $250 in bonus bets right off the bat. No questions asked, all guaranteed. Make sure you go to FanDuel.com today, sign up. Winning can never be easier. Everything's right at your fingertips. And above all else, you can cash out right there as well. All of it is available, and it's right at your fingertips. Like I said, go to FanDuel.com and get in on the action right now. Don't miss out. All right, we'll be back in 1 minute with Locked On Gamecocks continuing next. All right, I told you it's going to be a quick one. I think it should be a quick one. I do want to give a quick little just recap of the NFL Draft Night 1, mainly because I know this is a team that is located in the Southeast, and there's some other things that happened around the SEC from teams like that, and also talk about the Panthers real quick, even though I know it's not a Panthers podcast. But majority of the fans that are South Carolina fans are also, from what I've gathered, Panthers fans, Falcons fans. 2 great drafts so far, and first rounds from both those franchises. Now, in a quick recap, obviously, in case you missed it, the number 1 overall pick was Cam Ward, which everyone knew was going to happen. Cam Ward out of Miami, right? All right, so Cam Ward out of Miami, he goes number 1. Travis Hunter goes number 2, kid from Collins Hill High School. Shout out to Gwinnett County, represent. But overall, everything was pretty chalky early on in the first round of the draft. Okay, a lot of most of the first 10 picks went about how they expected. Things I was most impressed with: 1, love what Carolina did to go get some weapons for Bryce Young. They get the kid Ted McMillan from Arizona, 6'4", 215-pound athlete, freak receiver, really good. Built like no other receiver in this year's draft, and can do other things that no one else can do in this year's draft at receiver. So that was a great pickup to give Bryce Young some help. A really, really good kid. Not a speedster, runs like a 4.53, but he's a really, really good athlete. Also a really good kid. Being a part of some of his pre-draft process with the Saints and talking to some of the people around that franchise. With my other job, like I've said, he was great. Let's see. If you're not a Carolina fan, you're a Falcons fan, shocked. Phenomenal job by the Falcons. Did some things they've never done before. Went out and got a Georgia player in the first round, which is insane. Also went and got James Pierce Jr. from Tennessee. Those 2 players, they traded back up into the first round to get another edge rusher, something they desperately need, which I thought was great. The thing with Atlanta that was crazy was they got 2 SEC players. And if those of you keeping score at home, for the 14th time in 15 years, the SEC ends the first round of the draft with the most players drafted. 15 of the first 32 players, nearly half, were taken from the SEC. Now, here's what's amazing about this, okay? Vegas, the number for ACC players was, I believe, it was Big 12 or ACC, one of the two was at 1.5. They had 2. Non-Power 4 players, that total was at 1.5. They had 2. The Big 10, their total was at 9.5. They had 11. The SEC total was at 14.5. They had 15. Vegas was spot on. One of the craziest things, by the way, if you went over to our friends at FanDuel, one of the prop bets they had up there was how many dogs you would see at home in the homes of the first round, and there wasn't a single pet shown the entire night, which was crazy. Anyway, back to the madness. You had The SEC finishes the night with 15 total players drafted. Big Ten follows with 11. ACC and Big 12 tied with 2 apiece. And then non-Power 4, including an FCS and a Mountain West player, obviously Ashton Genty from Boise State and a kid from North Dakota State. They each had 1. All in all, you had 19 total teams with a player drafted in the first round. From the SEC alone, you had LSU, Missouri, Texas, Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Tennessee, and Kentucky. You had 9 different teams from the SEC with a first-round player. Still shocked it wasn't 10 because of the Nicky Emmanwori thing, but, whatever. Insane to me that you had 19 total teams, 9 from this conference, which is just wild, as wild can be. So teams with multiple players drafted, thought this was pretty interesting. Ohio State had several. I think they had 4 all in all. Maybe it was 3, but I think they had 4. Oregon had 2. Ole Miss had 2. Georgia had 3. Bama had 2. Texas had 3. Penn State had 2. Michigan had 3 or 4. But one of the big news, or one of the big stories from the first round of the draft, Shedeur Sanders dropping out of the first round, dropping down to number 2, or dropping down to second round. He will probably go very early in the second round, him and Jalen Milroe both, but especially Shedeur Sanders. So, interesting first round all in all. I think the second day should be a lot better for South Carolina fans. And we'll be here to cover all of it, including not only the NFL draft, but we'll talk about that all weekend, as well as a huge series against Kentucky in baseball and softball playing as well. So I hope all you guys have a good rest of your night. I know, like I said, it's a late night. It's 12:30 in the morning here, but want to get this pod out first thing in the morning for you guys. And I hope all of you enjoy it. And we'll talk to you guys later. Go Cox.